All right. Oh no, my mic. All right. All right. We are live. There we go. Thank you, everybody. Sorry for that sort of weird start. I am not late. I started at 2 o'clock. I do not care what you guys say. I love you too, Tyrone. I love you too. You guys know the drill. If you want to put where you are from in the chat, I love to see it. So, hello from Romania. Hello. I'm just going to retweet my live streams as I normally do. And yeah. I hope everybody is doing fantastic today. We have a lot to talk about. We got, obviously, the Syria news that we're going to talk about. We're going to go into depth on that today. We're going to talk about the current situation in Ukraine, what's going on, and the overall geopolitical outlook, I would say, with regards to Syria and how it's going to affect the Russians, the Iranians, the Israelis, everything moving forward. So we have a lot to talk about. Let's see. New Zealand, Jamaica, Cairo, Seattle. Oh, and by the way, I do have an announcement. I think I'll probably make it at like 8 or 10 minute mark, probably when the majority of people get in here. But no, it is not my pregnancy announcement. Not yet, at least. We are trying. We are trying to get me pregnant, but I don't have a lot of good eggs, so it's a work in progress. All right, everybody. Let's see. Greetings from Belgium, Birmingham, Serbia. Awesome, guys. Oregon. Yes, I'm trying to get pregnant. Me personally, as a man in the United States, in the Western civilized democracy, we can actually get pregnant. So get with the times. 2024. So yeah. All right. Everybody's in here now for the most part. Got my streams retweeted and everything. I will give my opinion on Syria after the map updates. I always do map updates first. It's how I always start my videos. And then after that, I'll get into the talking about Syria and some stuff like that that's going on. All right, everybody. Welcome in to episode 121 of the Calibrated live stream with Scott. I am, of course, your host, Scott, the one, the only, the irritable, the annoying, the ever so bald Scott Starrett. I am here to bring you all of your news. I hope you guys have had a tremendous weekend, and I'm glad you are here to wrap up that weekend with me. For some of you, at least, wrapping it up. Some of you, it might be 2 o'clock or noon or something like that. But wrapping it up because there is no better ending to your day than listening to me ramble about what's going on in Ukraine. I appreciate everybody. I am also Aiden. My full name, everybody. Somebody just asked, who is Aiden then? My full name is Scottson Aiden Starrett. So I go by Aiden with my family. That's my handle on Twitter. But my first name is Scott. So, all right. Map updates. Here we go, everybody. We actually have quite a few map updates today. There is some pretty significant happenings going on in Ukraine right now. So I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller here, and we are going to talk about some of the advances being made. There are advances in the Kursk region. Down in this area, I do believe the Russians have completely captured Pokrovo right here, and have crossed the Paseli River. This is what is being reported. So they are pushing along the border again, just trying to cut off Ukrainian connection to Ukraine itself into the Kursk region. Most importantly, getting to this R200 highway right here that runs into Struzda. That would be the end of the Kursk incursion. You can see it's much smaller now, but the Russians are not pushing extremely hard in this region to get the Ukrainians to fall out of it. Remember, this is the way I always like to explain the Kursk region is we sort of have an open wound here, and it will just continue to fester and bleed the Ukrainians while they're losing the more important fortified cities in the east. So let the Ukrainians, if you're looking at it from a Russian perspective, let the Ukrainians hold their territory in Kursk for as long as they want. They have to continuously put manpower and equipment very close to the border or into Russia itself, where Russia has extremely short logistics and air dominance with drones and aviation. So this is a really not bad thing for Russia that it's open. It's going to it's a PR trap. The Ukrainians do this a lot, where they get themselves into a situation where militarily it makes sense to do something, but from a PR perspective, from an external outlook perspective, they can't do that, and that's what the Kursk operation is. All right, moving over to the Kharkov region, right here around Kupiansk. We don't have any news from this pocket again. I imagine that the Ukrainians are trying desperately to prevent the Russians from seizing all of Kupiansk. So there is heavy battles going on in this area, but not a ton of news coming out of here right now. We do have a small update that the area between Lazova and Kopani down here has closed. So just the front line has sort of leveled and is now headed in the direction of Borova. All right, moving down to Chasiv Yar, we have a pretty significant update here, and I'm going to open up actually the topographical map so we can take a look at that as well. But as you can see here, the Russian armed forces have advanced out of the Kalinina sort of area. Kalinina is this town, but it runs across the canal here and into the northern side of Chasiv Yar. And if when we go over to the topographical map, you guys will see that this all right here is high ground. So this is very important that the Russians were able to advance through this tree line and actually approach the refractory plant, as well as entering the most easternmost suburb of Chasiv Yar from the east. I'm sorry, the westernmost suburb of Chasiv Yar from the east. Most of the refractory plant is also under Russian control or in the gray zone. So the Battle of Chasiv Yar, from a tactical standpoint, is almost over, right? So we zoom in here. This Mikhailivka, I will, just for the sake of argument, I will consider all of this to be Chasiv Yar. And as we go over and look at the topographical map, you'll see that the Russians now almost entirely control the high ground in Chasiv Yar, and will be able to push that advantage in the near future, as they always do. They always take the high ground before advancing. So I'm going to move us over to the topographical map so you guys can see that real fast. Boom. Okay, here's Bakhmut. Here's Chasiv Yar. And back over here is, Mikhailivka is back over here. So this is the other town, sort of, that I said I added into Chasiv Yar. You can see that it is on the low ground. It is not a strategic area to sit at all. The Russians have advanced into this area, into the refractory plant, which is the peak high ground in Chasiv Yar. So the Russians are now fighting basically for the hill that overlooks all of the Donbass, kind of. This is like the hill. If you zoom out, you can see what I'm talking about. Maybe a little bit closer. You can see what I'm talking about here. This is the hill. It overlooks Konstantinivka, Druskivka, Kramatorsk, and Sloviansk. Not directly, obviously, the line of sight, you can't see that, but you can see how the rest of the eastern front for the Ukrainians, for the AFU, what they control is now all on the low ground, and the Russians are now sitting very happily along this high ground here, and they will continue to push their advantage. And what you will end up seeing, and I'll take you back over to the map to show you in a little bit, and I'm going to make a prediction video about this very soon, is that the Russians, once they capture Chasiv Yar, will begin to push their advantage along this railroad. You can see this high ground right here, and then work their way down behind Konstantinivka, And then from the south, as Pokrovsk is captured, they will do the same thing, working their way back up to this side and just begin encircling the entirety of the east. Now, will the Ukrainians be able to last that long? I don't know. I always go forward with these sort of analytical hypotheticals in a way that basically argues that the way the situation is right now is going to at least continue, maybe slightly degrade for the Ukrainians. But I'm not saying that, like there's a chance that Kramatorsk, Konstantinivka, Druskivka, and Slavyansk aren't fought for at all if the Ukrainian army just collapses and runs away to the eastern or the western bank of the Dnieper River. Like you can't argue those things, but from a purely tactical perspective right now, I do believe that the Russians will try to push their advantage along this railroad and then attack down into this string of settlements. It just makes sense, as well as pushing north. All right. See, is everybody doing good? All right, we're at 11 minutes. Okay, my announcement right before we get back into the map. Tomorrow at 1800 London time, which would be, I think it's 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I will be doing a live stream with the Duran. I am very excited to have Alex and Alex, both of the Alexes from the Duran, on my podcast. So that will be happening tomorrow. It's like my dream kind of podcast right now. It was like the one that I really wanted to do. I got it. So I'm super excited. It should be happening tomorrow. We've agreed upon it. Everything's good. Things happen, but as of right now, tomorrow around noonish time, in the US, there will be a stream with myself and the Duran. So awesome. All right, guys, moving into, the rest of the map. All right, down here into Toretsk, we have a pretty big update. Remember the key area that I had been talking about for quite some time. I mean, the key area I've been talking about since the Russians were advancing through Shumy and Zalizny and Pridevny and New York. Remember back here, very, very early on, I said that there were these two terrakons right here and right here that were key to entering Toretsk. Once those were captured, the Russians clearly were able to enter Toretsk and begin to push their advantage. The next set of objectives was this central terrakon here, as well as, or central terrakons, I should say, industrial waste heaps, if you guys don't know, and this large industrial facility, as well as what you might consider the citadel of the city, the central defensive point with high-rise buildings, which usually offers an extreme defensive advantage. That area has now been entirely captured by the Russians, and the Battle of Toretsk is entering into its final phases, as there is no more large structure for the Ukrainians to operate within. There are a few warehouse buildings that are likely already bombed and will likely be destroyed, and then this one very isolated industrial area out here to the north, which will probably be one of the major defense points for the Ukrainians for a little while at least. But the Battle of Toretsk is now coming into its final phases. The Ukrainians held this for a very long time. I was actually extremely impressed because the way that the lines have been, there's been these dramatic sort of collapses in this region where the Russians will advance multiple kilometers in a single day. And the Ukrainians have done an excellent job of actually stabilizing this area and putting up a pretty, solid defense, I would say. But at a certain point, it has just run its course, and now it's coming to the end. All right. This is the bulk of the update, and this is the title of the episode. So, as we look at the southern Pokrovsk area, I want you guys to think back. Oh, actually, I wonder if I have... Nah, I'll do that later. But I want you guys to think back to earlier, sort of before Seledove was captured, which is not really that long ago. It was like 2 months ago or 3 months ago. was the capture of Seladove. So that was not too long ago. But back before then, remember, Novohordivka was sort of the absolute tip of this advance. Now it's over here in Novotrotsky, but this was sort of the point of the entire. Oh, my camera went out. Oops. There we go. Sorry, guys. I don't know what that is. I don't know why it does that. I'm trying to figure it out. It's the same thing that was happening with my mic in the past. That I fixed that issue, and now my camera decides to do the same thing, but it's fine because you can continue hearing me. So my ugly face is not damn near as important, but thank you for letting me know. So if you guys remember, the Russian armed forces had not advanced past this Vovocha line at all. Remember, in the last 2 months, I would say, the Russians have captured Seladove, closed the pocket north of Kharkove, and have progressed out of Seladove tremendously. Guys, this is what I'm referring to when I talk about a collapse. The things that used to take like literally years in this war are now happening month to month, week to week. The Russians are progressing at such a pace that there's no way you can explain this just outside of a collapse. This is a calamity for the style of defense that the Ukrainian armed forces is trying to employ. If they were, sacrificing space for time and saving manpower and conserving here and conserving there, and the Russians were gaining chunks of territory, but it was coming at a cost, and the Ukrainians were making smart tactical decisions, backing up wherever they could, right? Like sort of like the Russians did in Kherson, right? They made a tactical decision, gave the Ukrainians a bunch of territory and a city in Kherson, but saved a garrison and defended against the upcoming offensive, right? That is a smart tactical decision, almost a strategic decision that ensures that you end up winning the overall conflict, right? And not getting caught with your pants down like had happened in the Kharkov region. And they didn't want the same thing to happen in Kherson. It made sense. Ukrainians are not fighting like that. So when I talk about a collapse, I mean that what the Russians are accomplishing with the current style that the Ukrainians are defending with constitutes a collapse, because they should not be losing anything anywhere. It's how they are trying to fight this war. If they are losing massive chunks of territory, I'm talking it's getting close to 1,000 square kilometers a month now that the Russians are capturing consistently. That is just going to continue to spiral, and the Ukrainians are not adjusting their defensive strategy. So this is what a collapse looks like, right? It's not working. It's breaking down. It's falling apart, and it's accelerating faster and faster and faster. I get a lot of shit about this online when I talk about the Ukrainians being in collapse, because we're right around 100 days since I first mentioned it. And that was sort of the Ugledar was like day 60, I believe. And the collapse on this side of Pokrovsk was day 1, sort of like in this area, Seladove, that sort of, or Ukraininka, that area. And people are like, oh, they haven't moved that far. They haven't even captured all of the Donbass or whatever yet. It's not about what they've captured. It's about the overall health of the AFU, the overall health of the Russian military, and what is happening on the battlefield constitutes that collapse reference. And so that I try to explain that to people, but I don't think people quite understand, because they expect a collapse to be like we've seen in Syria, where the entire line just falls apart and nobody fights, and it's just like the whole country is captured in a week. That was unbelievable that happened. Almost agreed upon to an extent, I do believe, with how smooth the transition of power went, the fact that Bashar al-Assad lived. I'll get into all of that in a little bit, but that is what people think about when they think of a collapse. But when you look at like Germany in World War II, after Kursk, 1943 into 1944, they collapsed that entire year. They just have more backing, more support, and more time to collapse back, right? That's not what the SAA had. That's the Ukrainians have that luxury, but that doesn't mean that they're not collapsing. So that's what I try to argue with that. All right. So To the south of Pokrovsk, now we will actually get into the updates. The Russian armed forces have made some significant advances all along the southern flank here, really beginning to push out this area. And remember, guys, this is exactly what I talked about. I had shown you this. I've been showing you this for weeks now, and now it's starting to come to the surface, right? So this is where I created the line. This is where the front line was at the time, was back here. And I said that the Russians were going to follow this river, which is the Solona River. And then down here to the south, is there a river down here? Or is it just a little creek? It's just a creek. So it's not a named river, but so you have the river up here to the north, and then, oh wait, it's down here. Yeah, there's no river. Oh, is there? Yeah, the Vovocha River down here. Okay, so there is a river. This area, the Russians are going to continue to push out and just continue to exploit because there's very little logistics here. This is the only road that can be used for this entire area. It has now been cut. These fields are wildly exposed, and there is no infrastructure in here to defend. So this is where I'm expecting the Russians to make massive, massive gains and really just completely compromise the entirety of the Pokrovsk-Minhorod conglomerate. When we're looking at this area, guys, I would really like you to pay attention to sort of the Ugledar situation, right? Ugledar has collapsed. The entire southern flank has now collapsed. And the overall size of the Russian or of the front line here in the east, let's just say, I guess we could go from Kupiansk, but yeah, we can just go from Kupiansk. So from Kupiansk, and I'm going to do this in American, to Ugledar, the front line used to be 134 miles here, right? And that was, Ugledar was the very corner linchpin of that front line. That has all collapsed now. There is no more Ugledar in this entire area. So the linchpin of the eastern defense now rests in Pokrovsk and Minhorod, which is 100 miles-ish from Kupiansk. So 100 total miles now is the front line, and now this is the linchpin of the entire eastern defense section for the Ukrainians. If this collapses, just like we saw in Ugledar, we are going to see a massive Russian expansion up through these roads, up towards, okay, and I'm going to mess these up, so get ready. Dobropila, and over towards Shakove over here in Toretske, behind Druzkivka and Konstantinivka. So this is the new Ugledar, except it's not going to be, it's not, a fortress the way Ugledar was, and its southern flank has already been compromised. The Russians are already moving, or they should begin moving up towards the ring road over here soon. And then just really start putting the pressure on this conglomerate. So I think that come New Year's-ish time, the Russians should probably begin the battle for Pokrovsk, as well as reaching back over towards Udachny over here and really cutting off a lot of logistics into the Pokrovsk conglomerate. So be on the lookout here. Serious Russian activation in this area, and they are having major, major, major success in this area advancing. All right, moving down north of Kharkov, Russian forces have just closed the pocket between Svantisivka and Stary Turny here, just leveling the front, nothing major. Down here, the pocket south of Kharkov has, for the most part, closed. These fortifications are now in the gray zone, and this pocket is just going to continue to evaporate, and Drivka is going to become, I guess, the next defense area, but as you can see, there's nothing to defend here. So I don't know what the Ukrainian plan is in here in the south. I don't think the Ukrainians have a plan, and I think this is where you're going to see an insane amount of chaos over the next couple months. All right, and our last update to the south of Velika Novoselka, the Russian armed forces have advanced through the fields. Again, on this side of the river, the Ukrainians are very cut off here. There's absolutely no reason they should be down here. They should pull back, create a defensive line along this river, and hold it, which is basically what they have done now. I imagine they still have positions in Velika Novosilka, but they are predominantly behind the river at this point now on the western side of this river. So Velika Novosilka is still seeing a ton of pressure and is still a major objective for the month of December for the Russians. All right, guys. I am done with my map updates. So now, I guess if we want to talk about Syria, we can talk about Syria. So the overall situation in Syria goes as follows. Let me do that. About 2 weeks ago, the Turkish-backed HTS, sort of the more Islamic extremist group in the Idlib region, went on the offensive and saw major success against the SAA. And not just success, but almost like unbelievable success. The Syrian Arabic army did not fight back almost at all in any location. They lost Aleppo within a couple of days. They lost Hama the next week, Homs the following day, and then Damascus the day after that. So in a 2 week time period, the Syrian Arabic army, the SAA in Syria, was defeated basically without a fight. They did not sustain a ton of casualties. And of all of the ways for power to transition in Syria, I would never have guessed that Bashar al-Assad would live and escape the country. I did not think that there would be almost no casualties on any side. I mean, there were a few here, a few there. Some bombs fell, but I mean, it was nothing compared to like the Syrian civil war or anything like that. It happened so quick and so. No, I don't want to say peacefully because it's not necessarily peacefully, but the transition was extraordinarily quick and painless. I think that this was sort of set up. I think that there are so many different sides playing different angles here. And Syria is such a complex and complicated issue that for me to just sit here and give you, I mean, I'm just going to give you my guess on it, but I'm not behind closed door meetings. I don't have access to information. I'm just looking at the situation, trying to be logical and giving my best guess. Again, I am not a Syria expert, so please, guys, do not go in on me super hard for all of my takes here. But just from a geostrategic perspective, I'm going to talk on what could happen in Syria now, and the how things might look going forward. So we could talk about the big winners and the big losers. I think one of the biggest winners of the Assad regime collapse is definitely going to be Israel. I think that Israel benefits tremendously from obviously Iran being separated from Hezbollah and Lebanon. That is going to make Hezbollah's life much more difficult. Israel's going to have a much easier time operating against them. This is a huge blow to the Iranian axis of resistance, whatever you want to call it. And in my mind, it's probably the end of Iran's conventional ability to deter Israel and the West. Part of Iranian deterrence was their ability to activate these groups, these militia groups, whether it's Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, or the Hezbollah in Iraq, or whichever groups they're activating, and they could put a lot of pressure on these different areas through that means, right? If Hezbollah is cut off and is unable to be the presence that they once were, Iran is going to be put in a very difficult position. And I think that this difficult position is going to lead Iran to a nuke. I think that the only possible way forward for Iran right now, if the regime wants to survive, which they do, I think the only option that they have going forward is to develop nuclear weapons, demonstrate that they have nuclear weapons, and then take the sanctions hit, take the whatever isolation might come from it, and just sort of become North Korea and hunker down for a little bit, because the pressure from the outside is quite immense. And the only thing that will prevent the United States and Israel from upping that pressure on Iran would be a nuclear deterrent. So I do believe that that's the way that things are headed. I think that the world has basically given Iran no other option. I don't really particularly think Iran wants a nuclear weapon. They talk about it a bunch, but they have the ability to do it at any time, and they haven't done it. And we've been saying that they're 2 weeks away from a bomb for 20 some years. And they've never tried. They've been very willing to come to talks, even in the middle of the Gaza situation, even when they're getting struck and Hezbollah is being assassinated, Hezbollah leaders are being assassinated and all this. The Iranian government was still very, up for talks, up to communicate on a new nuclear deal or something of the sort. Now that seems to be completely off the board, and the language coming from Iranian officials is no longer hush hush about maybe getting a nuke. Now they're basically saying they have no option, and this is what is going to happen. The IAEA has also been reporting for days now that Iran has significantly increased their uranium enrichment. Now, is that factual? I'm not sure. I would assume so. It's what I would be doing if I was Iran. However, the IAEA can always be used as a propaganda tool, and you can always have to be careful about the West trying to create a casus belli, a reason to go into Iran. And a very good reason would be to prevent them from acquiring nuclear weapons. So I think that that's what's in the future. I'm also going to now talk about the Russian position. So I think the biggest winner is Israel, at least temporarily. What comes out of Syria, if there's another civil war in Syria, which I think is very, very possible, considering all of the groups there still hate each other, and there was no fighting in the Assad regime collapse, right? So you still have all of those SAA fighters that are still in the country. You have all HTS who's still in the country. You have SDF, the American-backed Kurdish groups, the PKK and all that. In the north east of the country, and you have ISIS, still there in the south. It's going to be a mess, and it's not going to go away. Old blood rivalries and tribal hate does not disappear because Assad is gone. No, it's just going to rear its head back up when everything settles down and people realize that they can be more powerful and have more money if they go against the people that they were just working with. That's how these things go. So in the long run, we could see America back in there bombing ISIS in 2 years because of the power vacuum that was just created. And that's what, that's sort of the way these things kind of end up going sometimes. I think the biggest loser of this was Iran. I think it's Iran in that, in losing Syria, they are the big losers. However, I think it gives them a good opportunity to do what must be done now and secure their future in the long haul, instead of doing this axis of resistance stuff, just become a nuclear power and then leave it at that. Right. I think that is the determination. I think that is the right move forward for them. And I think that is likely what is going to happen. As for Russia, Russia had bases, still has bases, but had bases with and agreements with the Assad government. Their warm water port in Latakia. I can never remember how to pronounce it, but on the Mediterranean coast, and their air bases in the country. There seems to be an agreement with HTS where these areas are not being attacked or targeted. HTS, which is the Turkish-backed group, you can call them the rebels, I guess is what the Western media calls them. The opposition forces that overthrew Assad, they are trying to be very diplomatic. It looks like they don't want beef with Israel, with the United States and the SDF. They're trying to avoid fighting there, trying to avoid fighting with Iran, and trying to avoid fighting with Russia. They're trying to actually take the country over, right? And to do that, you have to be diplomatic. You can't be an extremist. You can't have an extremist stance. And allowing Russia to continue operating in the country, at least temporarily, is a good way to manage that, not threatening their high value assets in the region. And so in that, Russia might be able to maintain their presence in Syria, although a diminished presence. But the warm water port is the bulk of what is needed. When we're looking at this from a geostrategic standpoint, to me, I think that this is not necessarily the worst thing for Russia. I think that Syria is a very complicated minefield for Russia. And if you look at the problems that its support for the Assad regime was beginning to create, it makes a little bit more sense as to why they didn't rush in to help him right away. And a lot of people might say that this is betraying an ally or whatever. You guys, it's geopolitics, and you're talking about World War III and stuff like that. If you're trying to win, going in and overextending yourself to save an ally just because it's a name, I don't think that that's the proper way of going about business. And the Russians don't think so either. So the Assad regime the Assad government in Syria was very, very good for Iran. They had very good relations. Assad let Iran operate inside of Syria, through Syria to Lebanon. And so Assad was very good for Iran. In 2018, we could say that Assad was good for Russia. That's why they went in and did so much. But the world has changed quite a bit since then. And now you're looking at Turkey, who is at odds with the Assad regime, and you're looking at Israel, who is at odds with the Assad regime. You have now removed that conflict point between Russia and Israel and Russia and Turkey. I think this is going to be very good for Russian and Turkish relations, which is a big chunk of the Russian economy. And I do think that this is going to ease tensions with Israel, because now there will not be this need for a lot of communication on, what Israel is striking, what Iranian targets in Syria that Israel's striking, and to try to avoid Russian casualties. It just gets rid of this underlying beef that these countries had. And I think that Russia is going to probably net gain from this, especially if they're able to maintain their warm water port. If they aren't, however, let's say that they lose both of their bases in Syria. I think the Russians have been preparing for this for a long time. I think it's why they moved Wagner out of Syria, and they have the Africa Corps now, and they operate in Africa with a much higher intensity than they do in the Middle East. I think that the Middle East, especially Syria, is a very, like I said, you have Turkey to the north, you have Iran to the east, you have Israel to the west, you have the United States operating within the country, you have ISIS, you have all of these different Muslim groups in the country that don't like each other. You have a Christian group who's pretty terroristic towards the PKK or the YPG, towards Turkey. Whether you believe it's like freedom fighting or whatever you want, it's a problem for Turkey. And so that creates a problem between Turkey and Russia, right? So I think that the Russians kind of saw this coming. I think that there's a very good reason why the Russians didn't spring into action to try to save Assad and to save the situation in Syria, because they looked at it and they said, what is it achieving for us right now? And I don't think that there's a strong enough argument to go in and protect Assad in this situation. And it, to me, the way the whole thing went down, it looked like there was some pretty strong agreements between potentially the United States, Turkey, Israel, and Russia on how this was going to kind of go about. And Russia had security guarantees. The Assad government and military just didn't fight at all. It was almost like it was an organized coup against Assad. And then somehow Assad gets out of the country at the very last minute and is now just doing it up in Moscow. It's suspicious, because you expect a Libya ending, you expect a Saddam ending, but never. Everybody kind of goes about their way, and it's okay, right? Nobody expects that to be the way that the Assad government collapses. So it's very interesting. We will find out what is going on, but I think that the Russians are moving towards Africa. They've couped multiple governments in the region and now have very pro-Russian governments operating in Mali. They will likely have one in Chad soon. All of these places in Africa are flipping and getting rid of their European ties. French and British relations. Making the U.S. Army leave Niger, making the French leave, all of these different places. So there's the Russians are starting to focus on Africa more. They're building bases. They're going to have ports in Africa. So I don't think Syria is the end all be all that some people are making it out to be for Russia. Why does that happen again? All right. Bro. Who lives at Dandis? Bro, this is so funny. First off, you're an AFO, so gay. They found my Facebook from when I was 12, and they think I live in my childhood home still. It's awesome. I love it. Yeah, go fucking bother whoever lives at that place. That sucks for them, dude. Poor bastards. I said, you were saying in a previous stream that I was planning to go to Israel. No, I've never said that. Your stream sucks, Scottson. True. I agree. We can put this one up in right here. Your stream sucks, Scottson. I don't even know what your thing is, but thank you for coming in here and enjoying my live stream. Appreciate you. Love ya. Goofy. Yeah, I'll just put this person in timeout. They're just fucking annoying. Oh well. Funny though. Yeah, no, if you guys do find out where I live, come to my house. I literally sometimes kind of want to know what it's like. You know what I mean? That feeling. You guys know what I'm talking about. Very few people get to experience it in life, but that feeling. Oh, man. A bunch of 96-pound incels on the internet threatening me. Ooh, you got me. All right. If you guys have questions, go ahead and get your questions in. I'm kind of done. I have a couple articles that I want to talk about, just some news things that are going on. But all in all, I think that is it for me today. Am I in Florida? No, I'm not. I go to Florida sometimes. I'm still in New Mexico. I just don't live in my childhood home anymore. I'm very open about where I live, guys. My politics are pretty neutral and not extremist in any way. If I die for what I say, or if I get harassed for what I say, bro, that is peak comedy gold. Literally meme the shit out of me if I die, okay? Please, make it happen, guys. Don't let me fade. 2025 fan meetup, possibly. Sure. I don't know where I would do it, though. Let's see. How much involvement do you think the U.S. had in the deal for Syria? I actually think that the U.S. was kind of caught off guard by this. And I think that this puts the U.S. in a very, very poor situation now, because now they're the primary enemy in the country. Now the U.S. is the invaders. It's no longer the Russians. It's no longer the Iranians. It's going to be the Israelis who are invading the Golan Heights now and expanding their control. By the way, I literally said that the Israelis were expanding their control, or they had expanded their control in the Golan Heights. And I was wrong, and you guys corrected me. And then 3 days later, they invade Syria and start expanding. So Israel's going to do what they're going to do, but nobody complains about Israel expansion because they're not Russia, I guess. It's okay when Israel does it. Doesn't make an ounce of sense, but they can do whatever they want. So yeah. Don't tell them to come to your house. If you have to cap one, your lawyer is going to have an easier time if you didn't challenge them to show up. I'm not going to shoot anybody. Nay, 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 nay. That's all too neat and clean for what I'm talking about. I would never shoot anybody that comes to my house. No, no. Scott, always sensible talks. Thanks. Super stoked on the Durand. Yeah, me too. I'm so excited. Thank you, Optimistic Future. I appreciate it. Careful, Scott. Listen, I'm not being edgy. I'm not being dangerous. I'm talking to the same people who thought that the ghost of Kiev was real. So I'm not being like I don't know, bro. I'm not trying to bait people into coming and fighting me. And let's be realistic. These people are never going to leave behind their computer screens. So we're okay. But I will be careful. And yeah, like I said, if I die doing this, I think I've won. And I don't really care. I'm such a nihilist about life. I don't really believe in an afterlife. So if I get to sleep forever, ooh, you got me. Death isn't scary. Dying is a little scary, like the pain of dying, but the death part doesn't really scare me. Calibrated. Biggest winners actually Germany. They will enrich. They will be enriched by more diversity soon. Yeah, no, they're getting super diverse. I'm pretty sure the number one baby name in Britain this year was Muhammad. So hopefully everybody integrates and becomes fantastic European citizens. I don't care if you're Muslim or Jewish or Hindu or whatever, but just if you go to a place and you move to a place, you have to become a person of that place. You can't keep your tribe or your identity when you move into a new. I mean, you can keep like the cultural identity, but you are an American if you move to America. You are not a Muslim living in America. And I think that that's sort of a disconnect with some of the current immigration structuring. You want people to come to Britain to become British. Like that's your goal is you're not trying to just import another country and turn your country into that country. How significant will the fall of Toretsk be? Not super significant, actually. I'll take us over to the map real quick. Not super significant, just because behind it is Konstantinivka. So after Toretsk, the Russians are just going to. It might be significant sort of from a territorial gain. They might close this pocket down here to the south, begin to put pressure. But really, I think the more significant area is Pokrovsk than Toretsk. Because after Toretsk, the Russians might push in this area, level out this front a little bit, but then they're just going to be fighting in Konstantinivka, which is going to be a mess. This is a much more defensible city, very large, huge industrial areas that interconnect, multiple citadel areas to defend from. A river that kind of runs in the middle of it, which is going to make encircling it much more difficult as well. Lots of roads back here. So no, Toretsk is not going to be super significant. Pokrovsk is going to be much more significant because if the Russians can get back here, none of this even matters, right? If a Russian can get on a motorcycle outside of Pokrovsk and there's no defensive lines and just start driving this way and cause chaos, none of this matters because it won't be able to sustain itself. So that is more of what I'm thinking the Russian goal should be. Instead of beating your head into an urban battle, go around and just create chaos in the back. Thank you for your question. Hey, Scott, what are your thoughts on the Romanian court couping the winner of the election? They just annulled the first round, I think, actually. Get it right. Democracy is very alive and well in Romania. They didn't coup anybody. They just said that vote didn't count because we don't like the result. All right, that's all that happened. If you guys don't know, a far-right extremist, I don't know Romanian politics well enough, but the way it sounds to me is somebody that they call a far right extremist, which is probably like a central left in America kind of person, won the first round of Romanian elections, and they claimed that there was Russian interference, so they just annulled it, and we're going to do it again. Basically, what's going to happen is they're going to pick who they want to win the election, and everybody's just going to forget that Romania is not a democratic place at all, just like every other Eastern European country, just like every country in the world isn't really that democratic. The most democratic places in the world is still just the illusion of an option. All right. We don't want immigrants, though. Well, here's the thing. Everybody's an immigrant. So at one point in time, you were an immigrant. Whether you were a Viking, like my family, we were Danes. We came over into Britain and we killed a bunch of people, and we set up our clan in the north of the country, and that's what we did for like a couple hundred years, right? That's what was going on my dad's side of the family. So we were immigrants, and then we immigrated to America in the 1800s. We were immigrants again. Immigration is very good, very important. It's great for brain drain, especially if you're trying to compete with foreign nations, getting the smartest people to leave the Soviet Union or China to come over. Okay, dogs, stop. Sam, knock it off. Dogs. Brain drain is super important. Getting those people to come over is awesome for your economy, good for your overall situation. What you don't want, like I said, is unrestricted immigration with no upside for the country that is accepting said immigration. Sam, enough. My dog is barking downstairs, and my other dog is getting upset. Where do you find solid info on Ukrainian and Russian casualties? There is none. Just listen to what Zelensky said today. The Ukrainians have lost 43,000 killed in action and 300,000 or 375,000 wounded in action. Pulling numbers out of thin air, fantastic. I love it, and nobody believes him, not even the pro-Ukrainians. It's getting abysmal, the fact that they can lie like this. And the British just claimed that the Russians lost 45,000 troops killed in the month of November, averaging out to 1,528 casualties a day, while the Ukrainians have less artillery ammunition, basically have no mortars. Their FPV crews are getting destroyed and sent in as infantry, but somehow Russian casualties continue to increase, even though it's very clear that Russian casualties are not increasing significantly from any point in the war. So no, you're not going to find good estimates on casualties. You're just going to have to wait until it's all over, and somebody's going to come up with a data point on it, and everybody's going to agree, and then that's what it's going to be. For the Ukrainians, if you guys want my estimation, I think the Ukrainian casualties are now well over 500,000 killed, and I have no idea how many wounded. I don't think that the wounded ratio in this war is going to play out the same as it has in previous conflicts. So I don't think the 3-1 or 4-1 ratio casualty ratio is necessarily correct. I think a lot of wounds are light shrapnel wounds that can see full recoveries now. So I think that the wounded numbers are going to be dramatically different in terms of like irrecoverable wounded soldiers. I think for the Russians, you're looking at somewhere between 120 and 150,000 killed in action, and then whatever wounded. And yeah, I think that's sort of where we're at. But it's up to you, honestly. You can believe like Mediazona. Mediazona does obituary reports. They have the Russian casualties somewhere at like 60,000, I think, which are confirmed. And I would say it's probably double that. But again, that's just me shot in the dark. So, new Biden military package. Any comment? Yeah, actually, I do have a comment on it. Right here. Biden administration announces a new $988 million aid package for Ukraine the same day Trump meets with Zelensky in Paris, almost like it was planned. The Biden administration on Saturday announced a $988 million aid package to Ukraine to ensure it has the tools to prevail against the fight against Russian aggression. This administration has made its choice, and so has the bipartisan coalition in Congress. The next administration must make its own choice. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. Basically, what they're doing right now is they're giving everything they can to Ukraine, and they're going to blame the failure on Trump. That's what's happening. This is just another logistics package. I've told you guys this multiple times. Somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion is sent every 2 or 3 weeks. It includes HIMARS, ammunition, artillery ammunition, and something else. It's logistics. This is not news. This is nothing new. Nothing's going to come out of this. So yeah, it's just what's left of the $8 billion that they had a couple weeks ago, or whatever they announced a couple weeks ago that they had left before the budget closed. So that it's like use it or lose it money, and they're just giving it away. Again, $1 billion to Ukraine. 1 less billion for U.S. education or U.S. infrastructure or, the things that Americans need. Nope. It all needs to go to get laundered somewhere. What do you think the most beautiful state is in the United States in terms of natural beauty? Montana. Easy. There's almost nothing that compares to Montana. Maybe the redwood forest in California. Maybe the coastal region up in Washington, outside of Seattle. From the drive from Portland to Seattle is unbelievable. It is the most beautiful place in the world. But I would say, in terms of if I wanted to paint something, if I wanted to paint the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, going and looking at Meteor Lake or I was just in this place. Starts with a B. Oh my God, it's in Montana. It's gorgeous. I sound like a libtard. Okay. The least liberal person, but gotcha. What is it called? Banff is what it's called. Gorgeous. It's beautiful. Alaska is not in the United States, in my opinion. Alaska is the United States, but that is such a remote wilderness sort of country. Like Canada, unmatched beauty, way better than Montana, but it's almost inaccessible to a point where you have to take a float plane in to even see the place. So I agree. Alaska is gorgeous, but I almost consider it separate, just like Hawaii is separate. I was thinking continental. I'm Calibrated's biggest fan. Wow, Jacob, that's interesting. Butte, Billings, yeah. No, Banff. Yeah, big sky country. It's gorgeous up there. Alaska is amazing. I'm actually planning a trip up to Alaska with my dad here, I think, next year. Scott is my second favorite Austrian. You guys are crazy. All right, I have one more article that I wanted to talk about real fast, and then we'll get out of here. Let's see. Two, actually. One is to laugh at, though. Donald Trump calls for an immediate ceasefire. So here's sort of Donald Trump calls for an immediate ceasefire in Russia-Ukraine war after meeting with Vladimir Zelensky. So it seems to me that he's still trying to push this sort of ceasefire talk. The Russians have made it very clear that a ceasefire is not in the books. It needs to be a lasting solution, and a ceasefire is not that. But the West can't allow that. So the West, Trump is trying to sort of signal that this is what he wants. Although what it really means is that he's going to probably end up cutting support for Ukraine, and then Ukraine's going to have to make a decision on what they're going to do. And I don't know if Europe is going to be able to continue supporting them in the way that they want, but we'll see. The way Trump was talking a couple days ago when Syria fell, or when Syria was collapsing, was that Russia was super weak, they're overextended, and we can put the pressure on now. So I'm not going to take a politician's word for anything. I'm just going to wait and see what happens. But I'll just read a little bit of this. Donald Trump on Sunday called for the immediate ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia to end the madness in the region. The president-elect's message, which he shared on Truth Social, came hours after Trump met with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky in Paris. The picture was quite funny. Trump vowed during the presidential campaign to bring an end to the conflict, which he said could be done before his inauguration, but he has provided few details on how he intends to do so because he can't. Zelensky and Ukraine would like to make a deal and stop the madness, Trump wrote on Truth Social. There should be an immediate ceasefire and negotiations should begin. Again, the Russians are not going to have a ceasefire. If you want to negotiate, come negotiate. There will not be a ceasefire. Ceasefire is politician talk. That's nonsense. All right. That was that article. And then here is this one that we can just laugh at. Talking about Russian casualties. From the BBC, Russian meat grinder tactics bring battlefield success, but at a horrendous cost. Tell us, Paul Adams, diplomatic correspondent reporting from Kiev, what is the cost? Tell us the truth, you Kiev journalist. We know how free it is there. Sam, shush. As 2024 draws to a close and winter arrives, Russian forces are continuing to push their Ukrainian opponents back. Russia is winning, but what is it costing them? In total, Russia has captured and retaken about 23,050 square kilometers of territory, 900 square miles in eastern Ukraine and Russia's western Kursk region. Wait, since when? In total? That's not total. But the cost of lives has been horrendous, I bet. Tell us, what is the exact factual number? Britain's defense ministry says that in November, Russia suffered 45,000 casualties, more than during any month since its full-scale invasion in February 2022. Full-scale invasion. According to the latest UK defense intelligence estimate, Russia lost a daily average of 1,500 men killed and wounded. On November 28th, it says Russia lost more than 2,000 men in a single day, the first time that this has happened. Crazy how as the war gets worse and worse for the Ukrainians, they kill more and more Russians. It's just like Vietnam, everybody. Syria is a lesson for Ukrainian-Russian ceasefire. Agreed. All right, guys. All right. That's where I'm going to wrap it up. That takes us to 1 hour and 2 minutes. Thank you all so much. Please leave a like and subscribe, and be sure to tune in to the Duran tomorrow. I'm super excited for that conversation. I've been working on my questions, getting everything lined up. So tune in for that. It should be fantastic. I appreciate you all. Have an amazing rest of your Sunday. Go Chiefs tonight. Going to beat the Chargers. And all in all, I love you all, and be safe. Okay.